So when that said to me, did you prepare a talk? I said, no. How come? I said, because some years ago, I went over and talked to Don. I said, do your history. So I got nothing interesting to say. 9 60-minute tapes later. So I had a lot of confidence. I asked Chad, what do you want me to do? He said, I want you to be funny, sad, talk about the mountains, nature, the history of liberty. I said, okay, do you want me to make it rhyme like a poem? Anyway, so don't worry, I got so I just made the 5-minute version for you. But I want to talk about two things, and one of them is just a couple of stories about out of Don's book. About his relatives. Everybody here okay?
You couldn't.
So his grandpa was James Edmund Shaw. And you want to have some fun one day, so just stop by and pick up Don, take him down for a chocolate ice cream at Valley Market. And then just drive around the valley and you'll learn a lot of history. So I do that about once a week and take a different route home every time. And so I've learned a lot about it. Plus I got to write both his parents' histories. But when Don was a teenager, they used to farm over there, over by the state camps up Shaw Drive. And I won't want to talk really about that particular accident, but there was a horrific accident one day. And Don and his younger brother were there, and his grandpa got his leg severed off. And the only reason he's alive is because his grandsons used priesthood and put him in the car and drove him down to Ogden without his leg, and even had to stop for gas, and got there, and there was a young doctor who knew some things that nobody else knew, and they saved him. And you would think, well, that would be a life-changing event. But you know the pond right up here in the park? Your kids know it because they go use the rope swing. Our kids did. Like, they didn't tell us. Where you been? Well, they wouldn't lie. We've been in the park. Oh, yeah. Rope swing in the pond. Yeah. Well, that's how they used to irrigate all that over there. And Don's grandpa, after he lost his leg, he got a wooden leg. Used to freak Lynette out because he would tack his socks up with thumbtacks on it when she was a little kid. Pull it up, you know. Yeah, I thumbtacked my socks up on the wooden leg. Anyway, he used to ride up, so he'd have to ride up there and open up, check the pond, and that's how they irrigated, and come down the ditches and ride his horse up there as a, older guy. And one day he was up there, and his horse slipped and fell. If you've been around horses, you know that if a horse falls, it fell down the bank with its legs up the hill. And he's pinned under the horse. Really in a very precarious and life-threatening situation on the bank of this. And of course the horse will not get up in that, you got to roll it over. Well, it rolls over on you, and he's fighting it and everything, and just really in a very, very tough spot until he remembered one thing. The leg that's trapped under the horse is my wooden leg. And he reached down and undid his leg and slipped out from the horse and got on his good leg and rolled the horse over and got the horse up. And I think that's kind of an interesting lesson that I learned when I put that history together, was that sometimes we think that things that happen in our life are a tragedy, when later, of course, we learn that they can also be a blessing. The other thing I want to mention, maybe I'll save that for a moment. I want to talk about, so Chad, see, so that was history, wasn't it, Chad? Okay, Nature. Okay. Nature. So,
We miss you guys in
for a while when I was going to Weber State, I couldn't decide whether I wanted to be a forest ranger or a doctor. Not compatible. So I took some botany classes along with all the classes for pre-med, you know, and working for the Forest Service, I realized I don't really want to be a forest ranger. I've taken all these botany classes, so went up to graduate school at Utah State, and I'm a teaching assistant, and because I had like 4 botany classes on my little resume there, I get the job being the botany teaching assistant for 4 years. I didn't even really like botany. And so they said, okay, you're helping this guy, Dr. Richard Shaw. In comes this guy, he's so what am I, 23?
Yeah.
23. Here comes this guy about 65, he's about 5'5", shaved, gray head, and he starts, okay, he says, you're gonna help me teach this class, and you need to know 500 plants. Well, what class are we teaching? He goes, we're teaching taxonomy of plants. I said, well, who the heck are you? When you go to the national parks, you see this book here, Plants of Yellowstone and Teton National Parks by Richard J. Shaw. Oh, he's been the naturalist there for 30 years. Anyway, that was a stiff learning curve the first year, because I would be running. His little legs would go like this, and I'd be running behind him with a notebook trying to write down every plant, how to identify it, what the leaves look like, what the flower looked like, what it tastes like. I mean, I learned something then. I mean, at first I hated it. I thought, okay, I'm just going to be, I'm going to go back to medical school. I learned something. What I learned is the power of names. And what I learned was the power of when you're out in God's creation. If you know something about that chokecherry or that maple or that quaking aspen and you know its name, it's just like it becomes so much more like the people that you know, right? You pass lots of people every day. You don't know their name, you don't know anything about them, but you sit here with people that you know their name and about them, right? And I would just encourage you, as a side note, so that Chad feels good, that there's great power in that. For example, you'll drive up in the fall, and you'll see the quaking aspen will begin to turn colors, right? And there'll be a big patch of yellow ones, and then next to it a big patch of orange ones, and then some green ones. And what you realize is quaking aspen don't reproduce by seeds. They're clonal. They clone themselves all around, right? If you've grown them in your yard, you know that. Don't ever plant one in your yard unless you want a forest. And so that patch of color, that's not quaking aspen trees, that's one quaking aspen organism. All that same patch of color. So you can look on the mountain and look at every patch of color. And that's a separate organism. In fact, in Colorado, they've measured, there's a stand quaking aspen that's hundreds of acres in diameter. They think it's the largest living organism on the planet. Or you go up there and you look at the maples, like right here, and they've turned red. They haven't turned red at all. That maple right now is red. It's red. That red pigment is already in that leaf. Like sunscreen. Like you putting on sunscreen. And what happens in the fall, as the days get shorter, the plant doesn't do photosynthesis anymore. So the green chlorophyll that does the photosynthesis begins to degrade. And as it degrades, you begin to see the red in the leaf. Or if you go up to Elder Cook's across the street from Scott Miller's, in the spring you'll notice, well, sometimes the horses like to eat them. You'll notice a field of blue flowers. They look a little bit like lilies, and they're called blue camas, right? Some of you know that flower, and Probably what you don't realize is where there's big fields of blue camas, there have been the Native Americans there for a long time, because that was the first flower plant that came up after a long winter of eating nuts and bark, that you could dig the root up of and eat a fresh kind of vegetable. But you had to wait till the flower came up, because there's another type of camas that grows around here. The leaves look identical, the bulb looks identical, but it has a yellow flower. And it's got a name that it deserves well, death camas. So you don't want to make any mistakes, right? So anyway, I think there's just great power in names. I just mentioned just two last little stories. Years ago when I was a bishop, we just could not find a Relief Society president. We had a whole picture board of young single adults up there. No one came to mind. We worked on it for several weeks. I asked the counselors. Down in the corner were a few pictures of people that we didn't even know. After a while, there was just one picture we kept resonating to, and her name was Jill. And finally, I said, I don't know, and they're like, that's the one. So we prayed about it, and that was the one. And we called her up, and she came in and sat there. And I said to her, you know why you're here? And she said, no. I said, you're here to be the Relief Society president. And then she got back up off the floor. And she said, how come? I said, I don't know. The only thing I know is that God knows your name. He knows who you are. And that's what you're supposed to be. And she started crying, and she says, for quite a while, she says, I haven't been to church because I wasn't sure God knew my name. There's great power in names. And the last one I want to read is out of Dawn's. So Lynette's grandma was a painter like her. And so I did their histories. Her and her grandma and her grandpa traded her for paintings. Not stupid. Don talked about his grandpa. His grandpa wasn't active, lived over here. His dad was tremendous. Some of you might have known him, Lawrence Shaw. Awesome guy, gracious, kind, fervent missionary. When he was about missionary age, the bishop called him in to his office. I suspect Don's dad, at the time, a missionary age person, thought he was going to be called on a mission. The bishop said, are you capable of running the family farm over here? He said, well, why do you want to know that? He says, because we're going to call your dad on a mission. And you will need to stay and run the farm for the next 2.5 years. That'd be an interesting visit, wouldn't it? And when he got done and when his dad returned, he went on a mission himself. But I read this last story because I think it's so characteristic of what, from the pioneer stock to those who live here now. It's so characteristic of the Liberty Ward, which is now the North Fork Ward. He said he'd been transferred. He was in the Mexico mission. I'd been there only a few days when I began suffering with a severe pain in my side. At 8 p.m. I decided to call the doctor. He said I probably had appendicitis. We called President Pratt, and he said I had to go to the hospital immediately. The doctor came at 11 p.m. and took me to the hospital. He operated on me that night. Two of the elders, Elder Burt and Elder Rance, took turns staying with me. I came out of the ether about 1 p.m. Between then and 4 p.m., he talks about visiting the spirit world. Then he said, when I finally woke up, there were 2 frightened nurses and 2 terrified missionaries standing by my bed. Later they told me they had almost given up hope that I would recover. Following the surgery, I contracted pneumonia and became even more ill. Although I was among strange people who spoke a foreign tongue, I received the best care. The doctor said I had very little chance of recovery, but through the administration of the elders and the fasting and prayers of the people back home, my life was spared. It was Sunday, and I knew the people at home would remember me in fast meeting at the Liberty Ward. I patiently waited in bed for 2 o'clock to come, for that was the time they held the fast meeting. The time came and passed, and I felt no relief. I was very disappointed until I remembered the difference in the time zone, which made it 1 hour later than where I was. Just 1 hour later, I felt a sweet peace come over me, and I felt new life and strength come back into me. I have always been grateful for this blessing that came to me because of the prayers from my ward at home. That spirit has always resided up here. In my 20-some years in association with people up in this area, I feel that same spirit, for whatever reason, in this end of the valley, has been retained, remains, and grows ever stronger. I hope you all appreciate the opportunity you had to hear from one of the real icons of the Liberty area. In Jesus' name, amen.